What's my SatAttack squad? It's your boy SatAttack. When y'all see the title, man, better check out MRBALLEN, man. This dropped 3 days ago. This national park has a death trap, man. But if y'all enjoyed that, subscribe on that road to 2K. Join the family. Got 1.4 million views. But let's get it, man. Road 2K, man. Help brother out. That subscribe button.
Today's story is about an infamous caving incident. The reason for its infamy
is fucking 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm hungry.
Actually because of a photo that was taken during the event. Now, if you didn't know anything about this photo and you just looked at it, it would be haunting and kind of unsettling. But when you have the full picture, the full context of what's going on in this photo, it will leave you highly disturbed. That photo will
That little photo, the last video I reacted to was that little circus shit. That video was, they trapped or they tied up the elephant on the tracks. Oh my god! And they hung, like, bro, that video was crazy.
This photo, it will leave you highly disturbed. That photo will be shown at the end of today's video.
Okay, just like the elephant.
Before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious,
it's crazy how he makes these videos into 21-minute videos.
You come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to cut the like button's front lawn. But when you're done, be sure to blow all the grass clippings through an open window into their living room. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Let's get it. Get poppin'.
On January 30th, 1925, a 37
Damn, 1925, golly, almost 100 years ago.
Old man named Floyd Collins walked through this huge forest in central Kentucky inside of a national park. As he walked along, his boots splashed in the melting snow and mud on the ground, and above him, all he heard was the sound of water dripping down amongst the leaves. It was warmer than it had been in several days, and so that was why Floyd was out here. He was trying to take advantage of the nice weather. And so after walking for a while on this muddy, slushy trail, the trees around Floyd began to thin out, and then eventually he reached the edge of the tree line, and in front of him was this huge clearing. Now, in this clearing, the trail he was on continued straight ahead, but it came to a stop in front of this huge cavern-like opening in the side of a hill. And so without hesitation, Floyd stepped out of the trees into the sunlight, and he walked the rest of the trail right up to the opening of this cavern, and he stopped and just stared and smiled. This cavern-like space on the side of this hill was the entrance to a cave known as Sand Cave. And Floyd had spent the last week coming out to Sand Cave and exploring the different tunnels, but today his plan was to go as deep and as far inside of this cave as he possibly could.
Hell no.
Caves were a huge tourist.
I'm claustrophobic. That's how you say it, claustrophobic. Yeah, I'm not. I hate close spaces, so. Cave, hell no.
And Floyd was a very experienced caver.
Especially them cave hunters or whatever they call it, cave, some shit like that.
Been caving since he was 6 years old, and he knew that most of Sand Cave had not been explored. And so if he could go in there and explore all the different parts of the cave and map it all out and make sure it was safe, it was sure to be a huge moneymaker.
So
he could bring people here and lead them on guided tours.
You don't think other people have...
So Floyd left the muddy path he had been walking on and stepped foot inside of this grand entrance to Sand Cave. It's basically this 250-foot wide cathedral-like space inside of this hill with ceilings high enough you could stand, but it's totally dark in there. And despite being this big open space, it very quickly funnels to this one kind of tunnel that goes straight down and connects to all these offshoot
I'm not going into that one tunnel.
Round passageways, many of which have never been explored before. And so, as Floyd walked across this big open entryway, he lit his oil lamp and then began mentally preparing himself for what he was about to do.
Real photo of Okay, a different cave.
It's going to be very claustrophobia inducing, even for a very experienced caver. And so Floyd reached the back of this huge entryway, and he reached this tunnel that would connect to the rest of the cave, and he began walking down it. And this tunnel was not very restricting. You could stand in it, you could move around in it, but it was very short. It was 15 feet straight down at an angle, where at the bottom of those 15 feet was a square hole in the ground. And Floyd, having been here the previous week, knew that once you go through this hole, the real caving begins. Now you're going to be down on your hands and knees, wriggling your way through these very tight and restricting areas where you don't really know.
Why would you do it by yourself, bro? That's my question. Like, what if you do get trapped down there? You're dumb, my boy. No one's gonna hear you. You just said that shit never been explored before. So you gonna be stuck there for I don't know how long until you freaking pass. Like, that is crazy.
Because again, a lot of this stuff has
y'all
never been explored
doing some
before.
crazy shit for
but
no
this
reason.
is why Floyd loved caving. He loved the adventure and the risk of doing things like this. And so Floyd got to this hole. He put his oil lamp down on the ground. He casually lowered himself feet first into this hole, which dropped down several feet. And then once he was on firm ground, he reached up, grabbed his oil lamp, and pulled it into the hole with him. Once he was inside of this level space, he crouched down and
I was just making sure I read the title right. Alright.
And off to his right was a tunnel that he could crawl through that seemed to lead to a series of other tunnels. And so he puts his lamp in front of him, he gets down, and he begins crawling through this tunnel. And after a little while, he reaches this kind of fork in the road where he had several options of very narrow tunnels to choose from. Now, the previous week, Floyd had gone down several of these tunnels and mapped out where they went, but there was one tunnel in particular at this fork that was very narrow. It was likely the most narrow of all the tunnels.
And he chose it.
But from where he had seen the last week, it looked like it went pretty far without obstruction. And so he immediately began going head first into this tunnel where he had no idea where it was going to go. Think about that. If you go head first into a tunnel and you get stuck, what are you going to do? You can't really go anywhere. So this guy is like totally fearless, just going head first into what most people would consider a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
And so the way Floyd would approach these very tight tunnels is he would put his oil lamp out in front of him, and then he'd keep his hands over his head, and he'd kind of wriggle his way head first and push his lamp along the way. And so that's what he did. He began going into this really restrictive tunnel. You know, it's hard to breathe because the walls are so tight on his chest cavity. But as he's going, eventually the ceiling begins to slope upward just enough that he can pull himself up.
Hey, I just realized this is good as hell. Like, I've always known this, but this is good as hell at storytelling, bro. I ain't gonna lie. This dude good as hell. Got me entertained. Like, I'm paying attention like he was at that point. Like, I'm envisioning him doing that shit.
Eventually, the ceiling begins to slope upward just enough that he can pull himself up onto his hands and knees and kind of catch his breath. By this point, Floyd was approximately 55 feet underground. That's where this little pocket was, where he could get up on his hands and knees and breathe. And so from this position, he still could see with his lamp that this tunnel continued to snake further and further down, and his hope was that eventually it would lead to a big underground chamber that was not just big enough to go to your hands and knees on, but was big enough you could stand and walk around in, because those were the big tourist attractions. Not only because it seems like another world underground that you can fully explore and walk around in, but also, as Floyd knew from his past experience of going into other caves, a lot of times those big underground chambers are full of Native American artifacts. And again, that was a huge potential moneymaker for people like Floyd, because it allowed him to advertise that this cave where tourists could go explore was full of all this rich history. And so Floyd eventually, after catching his breath in this little spot, got back down onto his stomach with his hands out in front of him, with the lamp out ahead of his fingers, and he began going deeper and deeper into this unexplored section of Sand Cave. And as he inched along, even though the ceiling remained very tight on top of him, he's totally compressed to the ground, the walls on either side of him began to expand, which meant Floyd, if he wanted to, could actually turn turn himself around, although he couldn't stand up. And so Floyd is making his way down this very low ceiling area when he notices his oil lamp is beginning to flicker, which means it's going to go out soon. Now, Floyd wasn't concerned about suddenly being in the darkness inside of a cave. Now, to most people, that would be terrifying.
Dumb as hell.
But Floyd, again, was so experienced, he was very confident that he could easily make his way out again just by touch. He didn't need the light. But he did know that trying to move around inside of a cave in the darkness was dangerous, and so he should not do that if he could avoid it. And so as much as Floyd wanted to continue and hopefully find something incredible inside of this cave, he decided he really needed to just turn around and go back to the surface and come back the next day to continue exploring. And so, because this part of the tunnel he was in was really wide, he was able to turn himself around and drag his lamp until he was facing back uphill, and then he rolled onto his back. So his head is pointing back up where he came from, and his feet are pointing in the direction that he had previously been traveling, and he's on his back. And so his oil lamp is above his head. He can move his arms side to side because, again, it's pretty wide in the area he's in. His head is pretty restricted by the ceiling. And he began inching with his heels and pushing with his arms, moving up the tunnel on his back. And as he would move, he'd use his head and his hands to push the oil lamp back up the direction he was going. And for a little while, this system worked great. But at some point, right as he was getting close to that area where he was able to previously get on his hands and knees and catch his breath, Floyd accidentally kind of rushed and pushed his lamp too hard and knocked it over, which extinguished the light. And so suddenly, Floyd was cast into total darkness.
Stupid.
Have you ever thought to yourself, wow, Mr. Ballin is so cool. I just wish there was some way he and I could come together and lay the smackdown on the ultra-successful, highly popular social platform Discord. Well, if that's you, today's your lucky... At 7 p.m. Central, click on the live storytelling event. Me and old Sing-Along will see you there.
The way you tell these stories, you're a good storyteller.
Now, again, Floyd was not concerned or really even scared about being in darkness inside of this cave, but this was not a good scenario and he knew it. But he told himself, stay calm, he knew where he was in the cave, he just needed to get to that little pocket, he'd catch his breath, and then he'd continue his way back up, eventually reach that hole in the ceiling, that square hole, he'd climb out, make his way out of the cave, and boom, he'd be done. And so Floyd just continued to push the now extinguished oil lamp.
Simple coming back out.
His head, and he continued to inch with his heels and moved his arms around to keep going backwards up this tunnel. But then, right before Floyd reached that pocket inside of the tunnel where he could get onto his hands and knees, he heard the sound of falling rocks somewhere below him, kind of near his legs.
Damn.
Now it's pitch black, he can't see anything, and so Floyd just kind of held his breath and hoped that whatever was happening wouldn't affect him. But then he felt a shooting pain in his left leg. A 27-pound rock had broken loose from the low ceiling and landed on his left ankle. Now, at first, Floyd was actually relieved that the rock had landed only on his left leg. And in fact, his leg was actually kind of positioned in a depression on the floor of the cave. And so the rock didn't really hit his left ankle directly. It kind of like hit the ground and then leaned onto his left ankle. And his left ankle was kind of protected in the depression in the cave floor. And so Floyd's thinking, thank goodness it only landed on my ankle and not on my head or my chest, because then I'd be dead. And so after catching his breath and kind of calming down,
I already know what story's going. I think
Floyd tensed his body and pulled his left leg as hard as he could to clear this 27-pound rock, but his foot wouldn't budge. And so Floyd thought he would just reach down and kind of dig his foot out. He'd just move the rock out of the way. But even though this cave had widened out on either side of Floyd when he had gone deeper and deeper into it, because he had retraced his steps, he was farther up the tunnel where those sides had really come in much closer to him. And so he wasn't able to actually reach down and touch the rock. The walls made it impossible. And so he wasn't able to use his hands to clear this rock. And so Floyd is pinned underground, unable to move, in absolute pitch darkness, inside of a cave that's practically crushing his chest because the ceiling is so low, and he knows it's unstable. The ceiling has now fallen off, so there's a chance more rocks could come in at any time. I mean, this is like a worst
bro, I will never, bro.
case scenario for anybody who goes caving. But Floyd told himself to just stay calm. He knew this was a very bad situation, but people were certain to find out he was missing, and they knew he had gone to Sand Cave, and they would come here if they would find him, and they would rescue him. And so Floyd just decided he would wait. And for an agonizing 30 hours, remember, 30 hours of pitch blackness, trapped in a totally claustrophobic environment. 30 hours of this, no food, no water, can't go to the bathroom. He's laying there for 30 hours, and then finally he hears a voice coming from somewhere near the entrance of this cave. And when he heard that voice, it was like the sweetest sound he had ever heard.
But how they
because
gonna
not
help
only
you?
did they represent help, but the voice was coming from Floyd's brother, Homer, who was also a very experienced caver. And so Floyd's thinking, thank goodness, I'm saved. And so Homer was able to navigate from the entrance down all the way to the tunnel that Floyd was in. And Homer got to that spot in the tunnel where Floyd had gone to his hands and knees, that pocket there. So Homer's in that pocket, and he can see Floyd is only a few feet away from him. He can see Floyd's head right there. And so Homer, who had a lamp, he shines the light on Floyd, and the two brothers don't waste any time with small talk. Instead, Homer, who had his oil lamp, had set it up right next to them, and he began feeding Floyd sausage sandwiches and giving him sips of water. And then Homer would tell Floyd that he just did not have the equipment to help Floyd get out right now, but Homer was going to go back to the surface, get men, get supplies, and then come back and save Floyd. And so Floyd is very thankful, he's very relieved, he says goodbye to Homer, and Homer turns and makes his way back up to the surface. 15 hours later, Homer would return by himself.
God damn, 15 hours later, motherfucker, you could have got what?
And so at this point, Floyd has been trapped for 45 hours.
15 hours later, bro, like, I've been, bro, what the, hey, bro, you gotta come faster than that, bro.
Floyd, he's laying there kind of in and out of consciousness, and he hears the sound of Homer calling out to him, and then he hears the sound of Homer chiseling away at some rocks. It would turn out Homer's plan to save Floyd was basically to chisel away the side of this section of tunnel that Floyd was stuck in order to be able to reach down and somehow, some way, clear the rock off of Floyd's leg and then pull Floyd up. Now, Floyd understood, of course, that this plan of chiseling away the side of this tunnel to make it wider was going to take some time, but luckily Homer had shown up with more food and water, and they chatted the whole time as Homer worked, and so Floyd was in good spirits and Homer was very optimistic. But after 8 hours of Homer slowly chiseling his way, widening this tunnel, he hadn't made much progress, and he was totally...
How do you not get help, like...
exhausted. I mean, you gotta remember that the angle he was working at was horrible. He basically crouched down on his hands and knees, chipping away at this rock. And so after those 8 hours, Homer would leave Floyd and go back home and sleep and eat and drink and kind of recover. But he told Floyd, don't worry, tomorrow more men will be here to help chisel away this tunnel and get Floyd.
Bro, ain't no way. Hell, my boy went home and slept while my brother's out. Hey, no way. There is no way in hell you just left your brother there, went home, went to sleep.
Out of there. But over the course of the next 50 hours, Floyd remained trapped inside of this tunnel with the rock pinning his leg, and despite Homer and several other men getting down there and very diligently chipping away at this tunnel, it just was not happening very quickly. And so over the course of those 50 hours, Floyd began going in and out of consciousness, and he began not being able to differentiate between what was real and what was not. At one point, he would say that he believed the cave had kind of opened up, and these angels riding golden chariots with flaming wheels had come in to save him. And as they were lifting him out of the cave, he smelled food and coffee, and then suddenly his hallucination cleared, and he realized he was trapped in the darkness all alone, still in this cave, and it was like it destroyed his morale. And so Floyd is really starting to go downhill, and the rescuers are realizing they need to do something, and they need to do something now. But at the 130 hour mark,
God damn, 130 hours, holy shit. Holy shit. That's like 5-6 days.
worse.
It's a week damn near down
As
there.
he was laying there, the 130-hour mark, things got even worse for Floyd. As he was laying there in the tunnel, this was sometime in the middle of the night, and so no rescuers were actively down there trying to chisel their way down to him. He was laying there and he was listening to the sound of the running water somewhere outside the cave, and that sound was kind of amplified down to him. And then all of a sudden, he heard the sound of falling rocks somewhere up above, and then when those rocks stopped and it went silent again, he could not hear the sound of the running water. It was very muffled. And that was when he realized that there must have been a cave-in somewhere higher up in the cave, which meant potentially there could be a significant block just to get down to him. Forget about widening this tunnel. I mean, he could be actually entombed inside of Sand Cave. And so Floyd did the only thing he could do, which was to pray. It would turn out that cave-in had indeed blocked the way for rescuers to get down to Floyd. And because of how extensive this cave-in was, the rescuers actually decided to start carving a brand new tunnel that would join up with the side of Floyd's tunnel. I mean, this is an even bigger undertaking than just chiseling the side of the tunnel that Floyd was in, which was their original plan and had taken several days. And so now they have to build this brand new tunnel to Floyd. And so finally, on February 16th, 1925, so a staggering 17 days from the time Floyd got first stuck in this cave, the rescue team finally punched through and reached Floyd. And as soon as they did, the lead rescuer looked over at Floyd, and then he paused, he turned up, and he just said, "Dead." It was...
God damn, they finally get to that boy 17 days later. I'm laughing, bro. Oh my god, 17 days later. Of course he's gonna be dead, my boy. Like, boy, bro, damn, bro.
Out shortly after that cave-in, which sealed Floyd in completely inside of Sand Cave, at some point over the next couple of days, those rocks began to break free and tumble down the cave and began striking Floyd until finally one or several of those rocks hit him in the head or chest.
I told you, Floyd was not making out this alive, bro. I don't
so
know
just
what
imagine you are trapped.
Bro, hey, yo, I'm never going cave hunting. I'm not even like, y'all wildin', bro. I'm too claustrophobic for one, but two, that shit can happen any second, bro.
You've been there for several days. You're in total darkness.
What you doing,
You're entombed inside of this cave, and periodically rocks just come tumbling down and smash into you. Who knows how long it took to kill him, but that has to be one of the most agonizing ways to go ever. Shortly before that cave-in first happened, a photographer took a picture of Floyd, who at the time believed he was going to get out, and all the rescuers believed they were going to get him out. But shortly after this photo was taken, the cave-in would happen.
Show me the photo.
And
show me the photo.
Point, Floyd didn't know it, but he was doomed.
Show me the
Here
photo.
is that photo.
Damn, Floyd, that's Floyd. Damn, bro, that is too fucking close. Nah, Floyd, you wildin'. Damn, that's a real photo. That's crazy. Nah, bruh.
Floyd's body was eventually removed from Sand Cave. However, instead of being buried, because of the interest around this cave rescue that ultimately failed, there was a decision made to actually put Floyd's body on display inside of another cave. Basically, Floyd's body became a tourist attraction. And it would remain a tourist attraction for decades until finally he was removed from that cave and given a proper burial.
The fuck?
So that's gonna do it. If you enjoyed today's story,
okay. All right. Let me listen to a comment. That was one to be. Probably never thought the treasure would be here. That's okay. Cave stories where they're crawling through tights and let alone get stuck for days. So that's what I'm saying. So much anxiety. Bro, having been trapped in a cave. Damn, you've been trapped in a cave? Damn, I can tell you there's nothing quite as terrifying. Yes. Thank you. Like, I would never be in that situation. I'm not going cave hunting. I'm not going to be in a cave. Like, alright. Road 2K, man. I'm out, bro. Okay. That was alright.